What's up, guys? It is JZNES back again with another review. Today we're talking Kirby's Adventure for the NES there. Now, I talked about my history with Kirby in the last video. I don't really remember what I mentioned there, but I do have a new addition to that history of Kirby, and it stems from this game. Remembering that this game was on the Game Boy Advance as Kirby's Return to Dreamland. I believe it was. Or Nightmare in Dreamland, that's it. Not Return to Dreamland, that's a later Kirby game. Nightmare in Dreamland, because there's that song, you know, where they're ripping off the Spy song or whatever. It's Kirby! Nightmare in Dreamland! Kirby! You know, so there's that. Yeah. So, but I remember, you know, obviously I remember that commercial from back in the day, but I remember one of my friends, not really a friend, a guy that I knew through school, and like, we did like church stuff together. I went on different little things there, but I remember one time he had, actually I think he was even playing the final boss of this game. This is actually how I found out about Kirby in general, was this guy. His name was Connor, but not the Connor that's probably mentioned before. Different Connor. Anyway, I knew a lot of Connors as a kid. Anyway, I haven't met any since, so that's kind of strange. Anyway, the reason I found out about Kirby was because of this guy, and he was playing the games, and I was watching him play it on his Game Boy Advance there, and I'm like, man, this looks pretty fucking cool, you know? You get to take abilities and do all this shit, and we'll get into that in a second, but I remember seeing that. I remember him being on the final boss there, of Return to Dream, or, goddammit, Nightmare in Dreamland there, so that's just a memory I had. I remember thinking it was really cool, so that's what kind of endeared me to Kirby. Now, later on, I would play this game, Kirby's Adventure, on my emulator for the NES, when I first got emulators, through my brother there. This was one of, like, those games like Zelda 2, and I didn't really play a lot of the first Zelda back then, I don't believe, but like the Mario games and some of the early Final Fantasy games. Like, I even played some of Final Fantasy 3, like a translated version or something, like way back in the day. And when I say way back in the day, I probably mean like 2005 or something. It's a long time ago for me, so it's what 16 years ago now? That's a long time, you know? Those fucking kids who are just learning to drive now that have been born since 2005, so I'm just saying. 2005? That was a really long time ago. Some of you weren't even born yet. From this stupid video about Miraculous Ladybug by this channel called The Things. It's a meme that me and my my friends there have. Anyway, so yeah, so I used to play Kirby's Adventure a lot. I remember playing it a lot as a kid. Late into the night. This is what I used to do, is sit on my dad's laptop and like, I used to play with the keyboard, so I was that kind of scrub. But I didn't have a fucking, like, NES hook-in adapter at the time, so I couldn't do anything about it. This time I actually played it on my Sharp NES TV, which looked really nice, and I'm glad I played it that way. I was considering playing it on emulation just because, I mean, I guess that would have made for a sort of a nostalgic thing, but I decided to give my old cartridge here a shot. I didn't want it to be another Dragon Quest situation, but I wasn't going to really save or anything anyway. So, you know, I didn't think it would be a big deal regardless. I was just kind of going to go through it in one sitting. Or maybe two sittings, but I thought, you know, I'll just try and see how far I get. And the game is actually really short. I beat it within a few hours. I think I like started at like maybe noon and I got done in like 3:40, so it took me about 4 hours to get through everything. And there's 7 different levels, which are the worlds of this game. So there's actually like 40-ish like levels with, you know, there's like 6 levels in each world. I guess that'd be 42 levels then, plus some mini games and stuff. So the mini games this time, there's like a crane game where you can get extra lives by you know, picking up the right Kirby. It's not anything like a real crane game. Real crane games are rigged as fuck, but it's actually a pretty fair crane game as long as you get kind of over the Kirby there. It's fine. It also has that jank control that all the crane games have where you have to like hold down the button and push the thing over, and if you like stop holding the button or whatever, it'll just fuck up everything, which I hate it when how the crane games do that or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, but what's what was I trying to say? So yeah, so there's mini games like that. There's like a battle mini game. I think they added a bunch of stuff in the Nightmare in Dreamland. Obviously the graphics are like better and whatnot there, but I think graphically for the time, obviously this was a late NES game, like 93 or 4 maybe. I don't even know if it was that late though. I think it might have been like 92 or something. But it was a later NES game. This is like probably the best looking NES game, and it's very superior. I swear, as soon as I fucking turn on this camera and start talking, that cat, he fucking comes right here and is just ready to be in the picture there. Aren't you? You just want to be on... You're just a star, aren't you? Anyway, so, yeah. What was I saying? Keep losing track. Yeah, graphically for the NES, this is like one of the best looking NES games, and the colors are so vibrant. It's really surprising how vibrant the colors are, because the NES is notorious for having such a limited color palette. I mean, they always made it work, but it's like the only reason Mega Man has so many blues on him is because that's the color that there's the most of. But it's like just it was so impressive what they were able to get away with color-wise. And it's definitely a big step up from the on the Kirby Dream Land on the Game Boy there, which obviously didn't have color to begin with, so it's kind of just not even a fair point. But it's so vibrant and colorful, and the areas are so well designed, and graphically it's just cute and adorable, and all the enemies are really animated, and all the areas are really good looking, and it's just a really fucking excellent looking game for the NES, and it's fantastic. And you know, of course, the Nightmare in Dreamland makes it look better or whatnot, but I still think that it can't be understated how big and how much of an achievement this was for the NES color and animation and graphic wise. It's on par with like some of the top graphical games on the NES there. So it's very impressive is what I'm trying to say. I don't usually start with the graphics and the music, but let's just talk about the music. The music is fucking excellent, and it blows the original soundtrack out of the water for Dreamland, that is, on the Game Boy there. Which is fair, because that's a Game Boy game and it's more limited, but it has a lot of the similar themes and whatnot too, and it just really expands upon and adds a bunch of new, more the classic Kirby themes. They're all here, man, you know, like from the start. And there's even a really cool callback to the first game, to Kirby's Dream Land or whatever on the Game Boy there, where there's a black and white level at the very end of the game. It's like one of the very last levels, and it actually kind of emulates the first like few areas from the first game, which is pretty cool. And it's definitely an awesome callback there. So that's really appreciated. And they don't even give you that many enemies that you can have like the copy ability to like copy in the first area of that. So it's a lot like you have to use enemies just like you did in the original game, where you just suck them up and shoot them at other enemies rather than copying their abilities. So in terms of kind of what was expanded upon in this game, a lot of the gameplay and the exploration is very similar to the original. The levels are a little bit more challenging and a little bit more expansive and all of that, but it's not that much harder than the original. It's definitely harder than the original. The original is a really not that hard of a game, but this game has its challenging moments, but it's also a pretty simple and easy game, mostly due to the new power-ups that really help things out. You still have all of the, like, invincibility and all of that. It even uses the same theme as far as I remember. But yeah, so you have all that. But then, now, Kirby has even more gameplay in terms of, like, he can suck up enemies. This is the major new improvement, is he can suck up enemies, and then you can use those enemies, certain enemies, that is. Most enemies will have it, but, well, I'd say like 60 to 70%, probably 70% of enemies have some kind of new ability, and they space them out with the other enemies that don't have abilities, that are just regular enemies, nicely. But there's like a whole bunch of new power-ups. There's like a so what you have now is a copy ability, and the copy ability is pretty much what Kirby's defining thing was from this point on for like a long time. Outside of the spin-off games, which Kirby has an infinite amount of fucking spin-off games where you don't have the copy ability, or they give you some kind of new gimmick or whatever. But the main series pretty much stuck to the copy ability and played with that, as far as I know. Or at least I feel like that's what Kirby's most well known for. And I gotta imagine that like Dreamland 2 and Dreamland 3 and stuff have the copy ability, and that's like part of that. And even Superstar and stuff probably have that. So anyway, the idea is that whatever enemy you suck up, you can take their power essentially, which is awesome. So there's like a fire ability, there's like a snow ability, there's like an ice ability. Fire ability breathes fire, you know, the ice ability is kind of similar to that. You can like freeze enemies and stuff. There is a beam ability, which is like one of the attacks that the guys in the original game had, where it like it does like a beam thing like that. There's a sword one, which is like one of the better ones and a pretty iconic one, I would say. One of my like ones I like to use a lot is the sword one. You actually get a sword later on when you're fighting Meta Knight there. So Meta Knight's in this game also. That's pretty cool. It's kind of got all the iconic Kirby characters. Meta Knight and King DDD. King DDD, the boss fight, let's just talk about this quick. I just want to get it out of the way. It's a pretty tedious boss fight, like in the original game. I don't know if I mentioned that in the original review, but it's pretty much the exact same boss fight. He's got like a few new tricks, but it takes forever to take his life down, and it's just really tedious. And the final boss is kind of like that too, but it wasn't as egregious, I wouldn't say. King DDD probably takes like 20 hits or something. It's ridiculous. It takes forever. And since I'd already just played that fight in the game like a week ago or whatever, like, I think that's part of why it was so tedious for me. The final boss is cool though. I like the shooter segment before the actual final boss. I thought that was really a neat expansion. And then you get the iconic Star Rod, which I mostly know from Super Smash Brothers, but it's iconic to me because of that, and I knew it was from Kirby. So, so you get that, and you get to shoot stars and stuff. The only thing about the final boss I don't like is that, like, shooting the stars is a little hard to do while you're, like, floating down. You have to aim it really precisely. Not aim it, but, like, you have to time it really precisely. Because as you're floating down, there's not a lot of time to be shooting these stars. And it's not the easiest thing. It's not optimal, is what I should say. And you can only hit him when his like purple underside is showing. So there's that. But it's a pretty good final boss. The mini bosses are pretty good. I would say the most tedious mini boss is again, he's much like King DDD, and I even thought of this when I first fought that boss. And they've reused this one so many times. There's this guy where he's got this giant hammer, and he hits down, and that's when you gotta grab the star that he hits. You better hope you got a power up at that point, because that guy is so fucking tedious. He also takes forever. He's just like a mini version of King DDD, and they probably do this fight like 5 or 6 times, which is just, that was probably my least favorite enemy in the whole game, is just fighting that guy again and again and again, because that one's also a pretty tedious fight, because you just gotta wait for him. I just hate that. But anyway, so let's get back to the copy ability. So there's like a fire one, I said there's a beam one, there's a sword one, There's an ability called Cutter, which is basically like a boomerang ability, which is fucking awesome. It's probably the best one, honestly, out of all the abilities. There's a wheel ability, which is pretty cool. It like lets you turn into a wheel and you just like, vroom, you just go, you know, like it's fucking awesome. You just pound into all your enemies. There's a high jump ability, which is like kind of situational since you can like float and whatever, but there is one boss later on where you have to like jump on these clouds, and then when you get to the boss, it makes the boss really easy because he's like floating up here and you can just high jump into him, and whenever you high jump, it does damage as long as you're still doing the move to whatever you're high jumping into. So I think that was a pretty alright ability. A little situational, I would suppose. There's one other one I was going to talk about. I can't... Oh, there's a crash ability, which is like a screen nuke. That's a pretty good one. What's the other one I was going to talk about? I don't remember. But anyway, there's a lot of great... Oh, there's a laser ability, which is kind of neat. Fuck, I know I'm forgetting like an important one. There's a ball ability. That one kind of sucks. That's probably the worst one, is just the ball ability. It's not, it doesn't do anything. Oh, there's a brick one. There's so many of them, man. Oh, the twister one. That's a pretty good one. It's a little uncontrollable, so I don't really know if I like that one as much. The parasol one, it's okay. A cool thing I learned later on, I never actually used it, but you can actually get rid of your abilities by pressing the select button of all buttons. It makes sense that it's the select button, but I was like pressing all of the buttons other than select to try and figure out how to get rid of the ability, but it is the select button, just so you know, in case you're wondering, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so, yeah. So the gameplay is really solid, and the level design is really well refined, and I think it's a lot better than the original. Everything here is kind of better than the original Dreamland game. Which, if you'll recall, I liked that game, but this is a much better game than Kirby's Dream Land, just because it was so refined, and they had the power of the NES, to really drive home, and since it was a later game, it really shows the power of the NES, and I really like that. I think Kirby's Adventure is a great game, you know, and it's just a really fun game to play, and it's really adorable, so it just puts you in a really good mood. The hardest part of the whole game is probably the end bosses, the DDD fight, and then that stuff is the only stuff I've really struggled on, and that's where I really like start to lose my patience, is when I have to do like a tedious boss fight like that. And the final boss took me a little bit too, but that wasn't as bad as in losing my patience and whatnot. I remember back in the day, those took me like forever though. I had to like sit there and grind on them for like a long time, so there's that. But, you know, other than that though, everything is pretty great. There's a lot of similarities to Dreamland. Like there's the first boss is the same first boss, like the tree. The tree is a pretty iconic like Kirby boss, I feel like. But other than that, like, the cloud enemy was in Dreamland too, I kind of forgot about. So they took a lot of elements from Dreamland and just kind of perfected them and made them better. So that's cool. But yeah, I think the copy ability really adds a lot to the gameplay. Because now not only do you have the ability to spit enemies and stuff, you also have that copy ability to make so many different kinds of amazing runs and just like things you can do. Like you could go for a single item kind of use run. There's also like these museum areas where you can on the overworld where you can go and take abilities from that they'll like give you. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, so yeah, so there's all that, and then like I said, yeah, so the mini games. This game has a save feature, which is nice, you know, because it's a late NES game. It's nice that you can save, and, yeah. It's the kind of game that's short. It's only, like I said, it's only like 4 hours long, but it's the kind of game you can go back and play and have like a lot of replay value on. The explorative elements are still there, and a little bit better done than in Dreamland. There's a lot of more... not like a lot of diverging paths, but there's a lot of like hidden stuff to where you can get like extra lives and stuff. It's not like groundbreaking stuff, but it's like, okay, cool. You know, the one thing I will say, I mean, okay, compared to Super Mario Land 2, this is like way better than that, but like, this is another game where I'm like, do we really need like a lives and continue system? Like, really all that does is boot you out of the level that you're currently playing when you lose all your lives and puts you back at the beginning of that level. So, okay, that's a fair enough, like, trade-off. You have to go back to the beginning of the level once you lose your set amount of lives. I like that. That's fine. At least they don't take away all your coins and make you do all the levels again or something. Like, not that Super Mario Land makes you do all of the levels again, but they make you do all the boss levels again. That would be really tedious if Kirby did that. Anywho, so I guess that's fine. Like, that's the kind of, if we're gonna have a continue system, let's do like that, where it just puts you back at the beginning of the level. Totally okay with that. You know, that's fine. But yeah. So, but the gameplay is just a lot more fun, because, like I said, the copy system, and that way every enemy kind of seems impactful, in a sense that, like, you're always looking around like, ooh, what's this enemy's thing? And you're, like, watching the enemy to make sure, oh, there's, like, okay, so there's, like, a fireball one where you turn into a fireball and, like, you zoom forward. And there's, like, a shock one, which, you can, like, you shock around yourself. There's a needle one where you do kind of a similar thing. I don't know if I talked about the brick one. I think that was the one I was trying to think of earlier, which, actually, Kirby has in, Smash Brothers there as one of his moves, but you turn into a brick and just like boom down on enemies and stuff, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, so there's a lot more variety to the gameplay. That's nice. I like that. And yeah, it's way more fun than the original. The original's still a fun game, but it's sort of in a very similar vein to Super Mario Land versus Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. It's just refined and done better, and they added enough to make it that much more interesting, which I think is just cool. So it's like the perfect sequel, in a sense. And I feel like this was a lot of people's first Kirby game, but you know, it's a great sequel to Dreamland, and I think that's really notable. It's a very, very good sequel. I mean, there's not a lot of those that aren't, like, you know, like I said, I've mentioned it before, but there is good sequel games, but there's not, like, a whole ton example of, like, great sequel games where the original was a good game as well, or something to that effect. But anyway, yeah. I don't know. It's just a really good game. It's a fun game to play every now and again. There's not a whole lot to say about the game. Oh, you can, like, you have, like a kick dash, to, like, knock into blocks and stuff now. That's kind of cool. I don't know if you could do that in the original. I don't think you could. But that makes things interesting. You can kind of dash into stuff. That's kind of neat. Your float is still overpowered as fuck. But they do kind of accommodate for that by having enemies have moves that'll, like, knock you down into bottomless pits and stuff. So there's that. But you can still fly over a lot of levels and whatnot. So that's, you know, that's still a thing. I like how each world is kind of themed, too. You have, like, you know, very similar to the first game, how everything is themed in each world. And the story, I guess, is slightly better because there wasn't really much of a story. There wasn't much of a story in this game, but there's not much of the story in the original game, but it's more about you saving Dreamland, and DDD is actually, he stole the Star Rod, and he actually is the reason that you could defeat the final boss or whatever, so it's almost like he was helping you, even though I don't know if that was his intention or not, but so that's kind of neat. I don't know. But yeah, like I said, there's not a whole lot to say. It's just a great game overall. Everything's good about it. Graphically, it's very impressive for the NES, like I said. It's just a great NES game, you know, great NES platform. It's a classic fucking NES game, and it really is so refined and polished compared to a lot of games of its time. It's such a high quality and caliber game compared to so many shitty platformers and stuff that just like couldn't get down movement even on the NES. Like this is such a fucking high tier thing compared to that, you know? So, yeah. It's great. The music is fantastic. It's quite a jam. It's a big improvement over the original in almost every regard. The gameplay is better. They have the copy abilities now, which is amazing. It gives you so much variety to your gameplay. Gives you a lot of choices and a lot of options, and I think that's very fun. Kirby and everything is so adorable, and it's just pleasant and fun to play. There's not a lot of bullshit, and I like that. It's still easy, yet somewhat challenging, which I find it's a nice balance. It's still pretty easy, but there are some challenging bits, and I like that. Yeah, I just like the game. I like everything about it. If you'll remember, it's in my top 100 games somewhere. I don't remember specifically which one it is. It's lower on the list, but definitely because of the nostalgia I had from playing it when I was a kid and all of that. And it's just, it holds up. It's just still a really great game overall. So yeah, and you know, of course, if you don't want to play this version, there's the Game Boy Advance remake there. So that's pretty cool. I do want to play that, I guess, at some point. I think I've played a little bit of that before, but anyway. Yeah, it's a great game. It's a classic Kirby game. It's a classic game in general. And I'm going to give it an 8.8 out of 10. Yeah. One of my favorite, like, NES games, I would say. It's just a lot of fun. It's amazing. It's the Kirby. So, yeah. It's just, it's really good. That's pretty much all there is to say. Is that the soundtrack? Did it run out? Oh my god. Dude, that's perfect timing. Alright, pretty much all there is to say. It's Kirby's Adventure. It's fantastic. Play it. Until next time, this has been JZNES saying keep it classic, stick around for more reviews, underrated games, and I'll see you guys in the next one. JZ, out.